What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing our predictions for Week 14 of the 2020 NFL season. So this week it's got some pretty good matchups, some matchups that could end up in upsets. I'm going to make some pretty wild predictions this week, so without any further ado, let's just get right into it. So for the first game, it's the Houston Texans at the Chicago Bears. This game, it's two pretty unimpressive teams. I think the Texans are pretty much knocked out. They're not fully knocked out of playoff contention, but realistically, considering how good the other two teams in their division are and how good the AFC is as a whole, I doubt they're making it in. However, I do still think that they're a pretty good team, and I think that the Texans are going to get the win here. The next game is the Dallas Cowboys at the Cincinnati Bengals. And so this one could really go either way. The Bengals aren't a great team, especially without Joe Burrow, but the Cowboys are not great either, and they look good in their division, but that's because everyone looks bad in their division. Except for Washington, but we'll get into that later. Got a little bit of a rant to go on about that. So in this one, I think that the Cowboys are going to take the win. I think they're going to be a little bit out of shape after all the losing that they've been doing, especially, they had to get whooped by the Ravens this week. But I think that the Cowboys are going to win this game. So the next game in the morning slot is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Miami Dolphins. It's the game you're seeing in the gameplay here. And so this one, all right, this is my first hot take of the week, all right? I think that Miami's going to upset the Chiefs here, all right? The Dolphins' defense is so good, and I know I've heard, that the scheme that they run is what Patrick Mahomes plays best against. So we'll have to see what Brian Flores pulls out against the Chiefs here. But I'm really interested because this, honestly, for all the slander the Steelers have been getting for their easy schedule, the Chiefs have had an easy one as well, pretty much the same teams. But, this is their first really tough defense they have to face. This is their first, top 5 defense, I believe. I don't think the Ravens were top 5. But the Ravens didn't seem like they were playing on their game against the Chiefs anyway. So I think this is their first huge test against a really good defense. So I'm really interested to see how the Chiefs play this year. And this one, obviously they're very different schemes, and you can't really, compare them. But I think that this will be a good judge of what teams the Chiefs will be able to beat in the playoffs, based on how they do against this defense. But that's just me. So yeah, I'm gonna say that Miami pulls off an upset here. I think Tua is gonna pick apart the Chiefs defense, and the Dolphins defense is gonna hold Patrick Mahomes somehow. I don't know how they're gonna do it. Don't ask me. But this is just my guess for this week. So I have the Dolphins winning this one. So the next game is the Arizona Cardinals at the New York Giants. So this one's a little interesting because the Cardinals have gone down in the NFC West rankings because of the Niners they're winning a little bit more. The Seahawks started losing, but the Cardinals are on a down streak and the Rams are going up. So they've been shifted down to third place in their division, and I don't think they're going to dig back out of it. Arizona is not a bad team by any means, but I just don't think they have what it takes to move up or even make playoffs at this point. I thought they were going to be a shock playoff team after I saw how they started the season off. But at this point, I just don't see them doing that anymore. But I will say that they are definitely going to beat the Giants here. I think they're a way better team than the Giants. The Giants' defense is stepping up really good, but supposedly Daniel Jones might be healthy. And honestly, after what I saw against the Seahawks last week, I think Colt McCoy might be the better option at quarterback at this point. That might be an unpopular opinion, but that's just how I feel. I feel like Daniel Jones is a liability considering how much he turns the ball over. But that's just my opinion. But I think that if Daniel Jones is playing, then the Cardinals are going to exploit his weaknesses, and I think they're going to take the win here. The next game is the Minnesota Vikings at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So this one, the Vikings, I think, are... they made it inside the playoff bracket. They're the 7th seed in the NFC right now at 6-6, I believe it is, which is really impressive considering they looked like they were, headed for a top 10, draft selection. But, at this point, and this is what I thought before the season too, before I saw how they started playing, I think that they're going to still make playoffs at the end of the season. Obviously, we're going to have to see how that turns out in the last stretch of games, but right now they are in the playoff bracket, and so I see them taking a fight to Tampa Bay, but I think Tampa Bay's tired of losing these past couple games, and I think that they're going to take the win. Personally, I've been pretty unimpressed with Antonio Brown on the Buccaneers so far. Maybe he'll change that, but it's kind of what I expected, to be honest. He hasn't really been making too much of an impact, but maybe he'll make a splash in this game, but I do have Tampa Bay winning this game. This next game is a rematch of Super Bowl 50, except with very different teams. It's the Broncos and the Panthers. And so the Broncos are not a very impressive team. You know, they're down there with the Chargers in the AFC West. But you know, they are slightly better. They do have some more wins, but I just don't see them making an impact in the next few years. I think they're in the beginning of a rebuild, personally, and even though they've kind of been mediocre for a couple years, I think they're still in a rebuild, but they are playing a team that's more towards the end of their rebuild than the Panthers. I think the Panthers are more likely to be contenders sooner. They were kind of rebuilding while they were still decent, when Cam Newton was still there. So I do think the Panthers are going to win. I just think they have more talent at this point in time. Maybe the Broncos will shock me and beat them, but I think that the Panthers are going to win this one. Our next matchup here is an AFC South matchup between the Tennessee Titans and the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one's pretty one-sided. Simply put, I just think the Titans are going to win this one. The Jaguars are definitely not going to beat them at this point. If they do, I'll eat my words and talk about it next week, but, my guess is that they won't, so I have the Titans winning this one. The next game is the Indianapolis Colts at the Las Vegas Raiders, and so this is one of the more interesting matchups of the week, I think. The Raiders are on a really rough stretch. They lost to the Falcons. They got blown out by the Falcons. They didn't just lose. They got just smacked. And then they just barely won on the final play of the game against the Jets, and I think that the Jets were finally going to get their win. I guess one of those cases of a bad team just finally getting their stride. But, they called a zero blitz on a Hail Mary, and it's Henry Ruggs, so obviously he outran the guy. Got their defensive coordinator, Greg Williams, fired for calling that play. Was it worth it? Probably not, but, I guess they're setting up for that perfect tank at the 0-16 season. But we'll have to see. I don't think that the Jets are going to be doing well, and, that leads us into the next game between the Jets and the Seahawks. But as for the Colts and Raiders, I think the Colts are going to win. I think they're a way more impressive team. The fact that the Raiders barely beat the Jets, I just think that the Colts are definitely going to, take advantage of them there. And then moving on, like I said, to the Jets and Seahawks game, another one where, I just think Seattle's going to destroy them. It's kind of like the Tennessee-Jacksonville game. It's not very close in terms of, talent or record or anything like that. I think the Seahawks are definitely going to win. Although, I think it could potentially be a close game because the Jets' offense is finally getting it together, and the Seahawks still have a terrible defense. We'll have to see how that goes, but I do think Seattle's going to win in the end regardless. This next game is another divisional matchup, this time the NFC North. It's between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. This one, again, I think will probably be pretty one-sided, although Adrian Peterson's been playing pretty well for the Lions. He said recently that playing on the Lions after Matt Patricia got fired is the most fun he's had in football in years, which is pretty funny, considering he got a fresh start on a new team, and then it didn't get good until the coach got fired. But that shows you how bad Matt Patricia really was. I think he's the reason why they were losing games. And honestly, him leaving might, potentially position the Lions to be in a good spot in the division in future years. I think that they could potentially, be a playoff team the next couple years if things go right. They fired their GM as well. I think that's a good thing because they can draft, who they really need and sign who they really need instead of just former Patriots players, which is kind of their strategy before. But regardless, the Green Bay Packers are definitely going to win this game. Aaron Rodgers is still probably a top 2 MVP candidate with Patrick Mahomes. There's a couple other guys in that conversation. Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Allen, arguably Kyler Murray still. It's hard to say with him. But the MVP race is still going strong, and Aaron Rodgers is pretty much at the top of that. You could argue he is the favorite. And so I think Green Bay is definitely going to get the win over the Lions here. So this next game is the New Orleans Saints at the Philadelphia Eagles. This game I don't really see being a shocker win for Philly. I just think the Saints are going to mow through them. The Saints, I think, they're not, officially a lock for the number 1 seed, but I think in my mind they're the lock. Maybe the Packers catch up, but I think the Saints are going to win this. And I believe next week they play the Chiefs, and I think they're going to win that game. But we'll get into that next week when we do the preview for that week. But I think the Saints are going to go on an end-of-season roll against a couple rough teams and take the number 1 seed and keep it. In our next game, we have the Atlanta Falcons and the Los Angeles Chargers. And so the Falcons are, a week, 2 weeks removed from a win over the Raiders, which was pretty shocking. And the Chargers are coming off of being shut out against the Patriots, 45-0. That one was really impressive, in my opinion, by the Patriots. They're not awful, but I wasn't expecting them to shut out the Chargers like that. The Chargers have always kept the games close in the ones that they lose. It's always been like one-score games. But, the Chargers, man, I don't know what their identity is going forward. I thought that they would be a team in the middle of a rebuild, potentially positioned to be a good team the next couple of years. But I think maybe it's time to move on from Anthony Lynn at head coach. I like the guy. But so far, especially this season, it has not been very good for him. I think maybe he should focus on being a coordinator or something again. I just don't think he's very fit to be head coach at this point. Maybe that'll change. Maybe we'll find out that he's a really good coach and this was just a down year. But a lot of coaches don't get an opportunity to show that in the NFL. So I think that he'll probably get moved on from in LA. But for this particular game, I do have Atlanta winning. Maybe the Chargers will finally pull one off, but I think they might be just prepared to tank the rest of the season, get a good draft pick, and try to move on from there. But I have Atlanta winning this one. So the next game is between the Washington football team and the San Francisco 49ers. This one, alright, so I'm going to start talking about Washington here, so brace yourself. So, as you all know, I'm a Steelers fan. Listen, the thing about that is, we finally lost, alright? We went 11-0. We finally lost. We lost to the Washington football team. Now, I had a feeling that we were going to lose this game, personally. I did, because it was a rough defense. It was our third game in 12 days. That's something a lot of people forget about. That's why our last two performances looked weak. It was our third game in 12 days, and that's a lot of games. And it's just, we had a lot of problems, we had some guys out. We have a lot of starters missing. And we'll have a couple missing for our game against Buffalo, which I'll get into. We lost that game. A lot of it had to do with Deontay Johnson and Eric Ebron dropping. They both have problems with that. And I think that maybe they'll be moved on from or benched, as a message sent to them. I think that might be the best thing for them. But it led to us getting beaten by Washington. We led 14-3 at the half, and then we ended up losing. It was not pretty. There was some, our defense was playing all right, but in the end, their defense was just going through our offense way better than ours was theirs. Alex Smith is looking very good. I think if Alex Smith was the starter on day one for Washington, there wouldn't be all defeated teams in the NFC East, I'll tell you that much. I think Washington would be leading by a lot, and I don't think they'd have a losing record, honestly. I really don't. I think that they would, and I think Washington has a chance to win the division and make playoffs. Whether they'll make a push or not, who knows. But Washington's impressed me, and I was scared of their defense going into that game last week, and I was proven right. Their only interception was caused by the defense and not an error in Roethlisberger's throw or anything. It just got tipped into a pick, but it was a beautiful pick, and they just had a couple other really good defensive plays. I'm a really big fan of Washington's defense, and I really respect the game. We weren't able to run the ball against them at all. So I'm pretty sold on Washington, all right? And I think the Steelers are looking better coming out of the loss, regardless of what all the NFL meme accounts and stuff like that are going to say about the Steelers being terrible and everything. I'll talk more about us in the next game, but, I wanted to gush a little bit about Washington and how I really respect them after humbling us last week. And San Francisco is an okay team, but this is just simply not their year. I think their ceiling is probably 8-8 at this point, and they're just gonna have to accept that. They're not winning that division. There's no chance. It's too hotly contested. There's too many good teams in that division right now, but I think that they could be positioned to potentially win the division next year or afterwards. But based on right now and how I feel about each team, I think Washington's definitely going to win this game. So I have Washington winning that. And so now for the Sunday night game, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills. And so we have Marquise Pouncey's back, Steve Nelson is back, and James Conner is back, and then Chris Boswell is back. Kicking wasn't a problem. Our fill-in, Matthew Wright, did pretty well for himself. But my point is we can run the ball with Conner. We can do up the middle runs if we need to because we have Pouncey. And, after Joe Hayden's concussion last week against Washington, we have at least one really good corner to play against the Bills' receiving core, which is what we need, because honestly, I don't trust our corner depth against their receiving core. Our safeties, probably more so. But I just think our corners are not going to be able to hold up, except for Steve Nelson, because he's a great lockdown corner. So we'll have to see how that goes. This game really scares me as a Steelers fan. And you know what? I'm going to go out on the limb here and say that the Bills are going to win this game. I honestly would not be shocked if we won. I would not be shocked if they won. This is a game I'm excited to see. I'm almost more excited to see it as a fan of football more than as a Steelers fan. It's going to be a pretty good game. It's probably going to be pretty defense heavy. I don't really see many splash plays happening. The Bills are playing one of the toughest defenses in the league. So I don't think we're going to see Josh Allen, throwing for 400 yards or 300 yards or anything like that. Maybe 300. I doubt it, though. We're just going to have to wait and see. I really don't know what to make of this matchup. If we can beat the Bills, I don't think we're going to lose another game this season. And I think that we'll take the number 1 seed and potentially go to the Super Bowl, and that's me as a fan, but also me, looking objectively at this team. And I think people aren't doing that. They're just hating on the Steelers because we were so excited. Our fans, we deserve to gloat about the fact that we were undefeated, all right? After having to watch this team suck last year like they did, I needed that, and we really showed how much talent is on this team. Roethlisberger is playing some of his best football he's played recently. Mike Tomlin is showing that he is one of, if not the best coach in football right now. I think he'll definitely win Coach of the Year, and that's just my opinion, but I really don't see anyone else that could win it other than maybe Brian Flores for turning the Dolphins around, but that's a whole other debate. I'll get into it in another video. But honestly, our improved run game, hopefully we sub out receivers, hopefully instead of Deontay Johnson, because he keeps dropping, maybe we'll play James Washington more at receiver. I think that the Bills, maybe they're the favorites going into it, but, I don't know how this one is going to go, so I'm just going to go out and say Bills. I'm going to, take the quote-unquote safe answer. There really is no safe prediction for this, but I'm going to go with the Bills here. But we'll check in next week and update you on that. I'm sure you guys will find out before then, but I'll tell you how I feel about that game next week. And so now finally the Monday night game is between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. I have a vested interest in this game as a Steelers fan. If we win our game against Buffalo and Cleveland loses here, then we clinch the division. I believe if we win in general, or if a couple AFC teams lose, then we clinch playoffs. And that just shows you how hotly contested the AFC is versus the NFC, considering that the Saints had clinched last week, and I believe the Chiefs did this week, and another NFC team, but it was more probably to do with their division than anything. I just find it interesting that it was probably just because they straight up clinched the division, now that I think about it. But, Baltimore, they beat the Cowboys, and they looked pretty good in that game. But I'm still not super sold on them necessarily. But Cleveland, I think their game against the Titans last week was a bit of a fluke. I don't think they're that good. I think if those teams played again, then the Titans would probably win. I could be totally wrong. It could just be a scheme thing where the Browns just have their number. But I'm not entirely sure. But for this game, I think I will have the Ravens winning this one. And so that's going to do it for the games this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like if you did, and comment down below what you want to see in the channel in the future. So next week we're getting closer to the end of the season, guys. It's pretty crazy. It's going to be week 15 already. I cannot believe this. We've been doing these every single week, and it's been pretty fun to make these videos, and seeing the support just makes me smile, makes it all worth it. So I do hope you guys enjoy these videos, and let me know what other kind of NFL content you want to see. I am working on a project, should be coming out in the next week. I'm not going to spoil too much, but I think you guys are really going to like it. I'm putting a lot of effort into it. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next week in the next video. Peace.